Johnny Mac's in the house. Talk a little football with him. Monday night game last night. Entertaining, high scoring, a lot of penalties. Those three are typically going to go together. You're going to get
standard.
The NFL now.
Yep.
A lot of penalties.
National Flag League.
Although there is a report out there that the competition committee is uncomfortable with the roughing calls. John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll talk some Eagles, some NFL right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by Harrah's Resort, Bally's Atlantic City Wild Wild West. Taking bets at their new sports book. Break up with your bookie. Wager today at the book. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. John, what exactly is happening with the competition committee? They're uncomfortable with the roughing the passer calls. Does that mean we could see some tweaks, some changes? Will it be lessening as this season goes on?
Yeah, I think so. The part that confused me is they're going to talk next week. Why are they waiting? This should be immediate. This league is getting a lot of bad publicity because of this point of emphasis. Remember, it's not a rule change. And because it's not a rule change, they don't really have to do anything. They can just get on that conference call and say, look, this is absurd. Let's go back to the way it was before. I mean, it's as simple a fix as simple gets. And I do think they'll get there in the preseason. Remember, they already changed the helmet-to-helmet rule. It was becoming ridiculous, and they quietly tweaked it with language that included the word intent. So essentially they've gone back to what they've done before, which is what they should have done. In this particular case, they overreacted to one play, which arguably, by the way, wasn't even a penalty. And that's how the league described it last year, which was the Anthony Barr hit on Aaron Rodgers. Remember, Aaron Rodgers was outside the pocket on that play, so he loses quarterback protection. So ultimately, again, he's tackled, he breaks his collarbone on a particular play, and he's injured, and he's obviously a superstar, but it was an overreaction. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And the league is getting a lot of bad publicity. The players don't like it. The coaches don't like it. The fans don't like it. So why do we continue going down this road? I wish I could give you an answer. I don't know. Everything with this league is revolved around safety, but let's play common sense for a second. All these hits you're seeing that have drawn flags, has any quarterback gotten hurt on any of those plays?
No.
So who are they protecting? The star quarterback, and I use that term loosely, that was injured this week, Jimmy Garoppolo, non-contact injury on the sideline, planting his foot, as most ACLs are. It was a dumb decision, and the league has taken way too long to react to it.
You mentioned, and other people have, that this is not a new rule. So why the drastic change? I mean, everyone says this rule's been in place since 1995. It's laid out simple like this. We've never seen it called like this, though.
Well, yeah, because the officials were directed. Again, I know everyone. I talk about this all the time. Everyone gets angry at the officials. You're getting angry at the wrong people. They've been instructed to call it like this.
Oh, well, let me stop you right there for a second. Let me ask you this question. If Clay Matthews makes that tackle, is that officiating crew getting reamed out for not throwing a flag?
No, in fact, the NFL defended them. They defended him.
No, but I'm saying, so Clay Matthews makes that he sacks the quarterback, and they don't throw a flag. My question is that crew getting penalized?
I see what you're saying.
Are they getting penalized, or are they getting reprimanded for not throwing a flag on that play?
No, I don't think they're getting deeply reprimanded. What they're told is that they should have thrown a flag, but as long as it doesn't create a controversy, no one's going to address it. And that's sort of how this league works. It reacts. I talk about it all the time. It's very reactionary. It's never proactive. And when it tries to be proactive, it generally makes mistakes. So the issue becomes when the league is under a microscope, and it's under the microscope because of the calls that are being made, not the calls that aren't being made, which everybody tends to agree with. And in the case of Clay Matthews, just really a solid football play. Whether you talk about he's been flagged all 3 weeks, and none of them should have been flags under the old. I shouldn't say old rule, because I said under the non-point of emphasis rule. And then you go down to Miami, and this is the worst part of it all. William Hayes obviously tries to do the impossible and roll off a quarterback, and he tears his ACL. And nobody cares about him because he's not a quarterback. I mean, this league is absurd. I talk about it all the time. When you talk about safety, all I mean is safety of the quarterback. Then when you talk about safety of the quarterback, all they really mean is keeping them on the field and protecting players from concussions. Again, no one cares about ACLs for defensive ends or cornerbacks or linebackers. Nobody cares. So the hypocrisy is incredible, but we know that going in. The issue now becomes, and I've talked about it a lot with you, Mike, this is not entertaining. And at some point, hasn't happened yet, at some point the fan base is going to wake up to that and say, I'm not having fun watching this, so why do I continue to do it? At this point, I think it's sort of inertia, redundancy. The league has been so popular; it's become part of fans' lives.
Well, that was the discussion we had yesterday before you came on, John, which was I equated it to when I watched The Sopranos. The first 3 seasons were great. The 4th, 5th, it started to dip off, but because I was just ingrained to watch it, I wanted to see where it was going to end. I kept going, even though I didn't think it was any good. I think that's people in their 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. We just keep watching it because that's what we know. But I'm not sure kids that are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like that group is not entertained by this. So you're right. There's got to be a breaking point at some point if you're not getting new viewers, and people in their 20s are maybe like the last group of people that were kind of ingrained to watch this, which means they still got about 30 years, right?
Yeah, but I think even with those people who it has become ingrained, and I think there's a tipping point there as well. And I think generally, I talk about it all the time, and especially now with legal gambling popping up all across the country. I mean, people are going to start to realize really, really quickly that the players aren't deciding these games anymore. Referees are, because these are huge, huge penalties. Yeah. And it affects teams' wins and losses, which in turn affects the livelihood of coaches and players. I mean, the repercussions here, it's stunning to me that nobody realizes just how bad this is. And I tweeted this earlier in the week. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks did a study on their explosive plays. And what they define as explosive plays are 16-yard pass plays and 12-yard running plays. And when that happens, the team is going to score 76% of the time. 76% of the time. Well, what's the difference between a 15-yard penalty and a 16-yard pass play or a 12-yard run? These are huge, game-changing penalties. And then the second part is people talk about it like when Matthews got flagged against the Vikings, which would have been a game-ending play. Hey, you could go back to the first quarter and extend the drive with 15 yards that turns 0 points into 7 points. And I do think at some point, as I said, fan base is going to realize this, and if it affects their favorite team, it becomes incredibly frustrating and it hurts the game.
But John, just to elaborate more on this, like on the flip side of things, I said to Mike, this is a transition phase for the league. Like it's really bad right now with the penalties and how it's affecting the product and the entertainment value, but it's a means to an end. Like in 5 years or 10 years, whatever the end year is, it's going to get to a different game. It's going to be, you can't touch the quarterback at all. The hits are going to be different. It seems like that's how the league, that's the direction the league is going, and this is how they're going to get there. So when we say, oh, they're going to meet next week to hopefully stop calling the penalties that they're calling, I don't know if I'm buying it, because my side of it is this is just a 3 to 5 year transition phase that the league has to do to get to where they want to get to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't agree that's the end. I don't think flag football is the end, because they know that will not be popular. This is just bad decision making. And if that were true, as you go back to the preseason, the helmet-to-helmet rule, which was completely changing the game, they changed it. They changed it. They won't admit they changed it, but they changed it because they realized they went too far. So it all, and I got this directly from John Runyon, the ex-Eagles right tackle, who's vice president in the NFL in charge of finding these guys. It's not about safety. It's about legal liability and future legal liability. So that's the concern from the league standpoint. The league isn't trying to turn it into flag football. They just don't want to go into court 10 years from now and lose another $2 billion. That's what this is about. But they're not, it's evident they're not protecting players. As I said, all you have to do is look at these statistics and look at these plays that everyone doesn't like and then chart the injuries. Again, no quarterback has gotten injured on one of these plays. And so far, it's 1-0 defensive lineman. A defensive end did get injured trying to obey this dumb rule. But again, no one cares about an ACL versus a concussion. So I don't know how much traction that part is going to get. I think the bigger traction is when people start losing jobs, whether that's coaches, assistant coaches. Remember, when a coach gets fired, it's not just the head coach, the assistants, it's the support staff, even secretaries. You're affecting a lot of people's lives with bad calls. Right. Well, and I think at some point the industry has got to come to grips with that and realize it.
The discussion we were having, and what Ryan's point was, yes, there might be a transition phase here. The problem is, if you are trying to lure a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid and they don't make it through the transition phase, it's fine if you're telling me it's a transition, but on the other end of that transition, who's left?
Yeah, I mean, that's the entertainment value. And again, we disagree on what the transition is. The transition is trying to get everyone on the same page as to how you're going to play this sport going forward, and whether that means signing waivers and giving up your rights to future litigation to get back to the old aspect of football, or that means tapping out and to whatever you want to call them, activists or who truly dislike the success of this league, success of this game, think it's barbaric. At that point, if you hit that road in society, then you just got to stop playing football. I mean, or as Ryan said, you're going to have a completely different game, and you can play that game, but you're not getting billions of dollars from television networks because the popularity will not be there.
Let me ask you this. Roger Goodell, let's say he's no longer the commissioner. Is the next commissioner who comes in, let's say he's a more free-thinking, open-minded guy, and he says, you know what, I'm going to take my chances. Is this Roger Goodell's doing that he has made the game safer, or is this a board of governors or the owners? I mean, is there the possibility that a new leadership comes into the league and says, they've gone too far, we need to pull it back a little bit?
No, it's not Roger Goodell's fault because it's a legal strategy. I always point out Roger Goodell is obviously the face of this league, and people don't understand. And what he is I often call him the highest paid lightning rod in the country. I mean, the real power is the owners. So the owners are steering this, and they're steering it this direction because, as I said, there's a tremendously large legal liability that's on the table if they don't steer it in this direction. So that's completely, and I mean completely 100%, that's what's driving this in the direction it's going. So the hope is at some point the players get so fed up that they agree that if they want to continue and make an adult decision and understand and stipulate that this is a very, very dangerous game to play and there could be health issues down the line from playing it, but they're making that decision to play it, I think that's where we have to get to. I'm not sure you can get to that point, but that's where they have to get to, or otherwise it's going to continue down this road. And people constantly write it off and say, this league is so popular, nothing's ever going to change. And those people, to be blunt, have failed to learn from history, because football was not always the most popular sport in this country. Baseball was for many, many, many years. Before that, big boxing matches were the biggest sports events on the calendar of this country. Both of those sports have taken deep dives. Boxing tremendously, baseball because of strikes and other issues. Things change. They're constantly fluid. And if they continue to play football the way they're playing football in 2018, this will not be the most popular sport in the country for a long period of time.
All right, a couple quick thoughts on the games coming up. Titans, John, they got all sorts of quarterback issues here. They signed Austin Davis. Blaine Gabbert has concussion. Marcus Mariota can barely grip the football. But this is a team that's won 9 out of 13 at home. They won 9-6 on the road last week. They want to make the game ugly, but playing quarterback with one of these guys might make it really ugly.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to wait for the quarterback situation, as you mentioned. Blaine Gabbert's in concussion protocol. Marcus Mariota still can't feel 2 of his fingers from the elbow issue. So until we know what's going to happen, and by the way, those 2 guys aren't good to begin with. I mean, Mariota's average, maybe a little bit above average. Gabbert, we know what he is. So they have an issue at that position when they're completely healthy. On the other hand, they do have a number of strengths. This is one of the rare teams that can run the football. Jim Schwartz joked about it today when someone asked him about how they commit to the run, and maybe that's 25 or 30 times, and he chuckled. It used to be 45 or 50 back in the old days. But if you look at styles make fights, the Eagles generally have a huge advantage against the opposition when it comes to their defensive ends versus the opposing offensive tackles. Not necessarily the case in this game, because Tennessee is really good up front. Taylor Lewan, Jack Conklin, both high first-round picks. So that could be an issue. And then the part is, as you mentioned, the Titans are very good at home. Eagles tend to struggle much more on the road. I mean, that's this league in general, but we saw the difference. You see the difference in 3 weeks. It's a small sample size.
Yeah.
Defensively, the Eagles are lights out at home, and they were bad on the road. And that kind of was what happened at the end of last year as well. If you look at how dominant they were in the playoffs at home, and then they get to the Super Bowl in the neutral field, Tom Brady's throwing for 505. The good news is with the Titans, with their quarterback situation, they're not going to be throwing the football all over the field.
Yeah, most likely not. They don't have a whole heck of a lot of weapons. I mean, this is a team that is, they went to the playoffs last year, but changed coaches. They don't have like a standout guy on defense. They're a really odd team, an odd playoff team that just beat a very good Jacksonville team. So they're an interesting team coming up. They're not the most exciting team. It's not the kind of game that you're going to be all jacked up for, but this is an interesting, dangerous team. The Tennessee Titans will dive more into this matchup as the week goes on. Good running back in Henry. The receivers, they got the young kid Davis, who's got off to a decent start. So they lost their tight end, who's very good. Walker, he hurt the ankle in the first game, so we'll see. On the surface, they look like they're limited, but this team is no pushover. More on this matchup as the week goes on with John McMullen here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Good conversation, John.
All right. Thank you, guys.